Hello everyone, Factoring Day's second video, going to have a look at the ECMWF, Meteo France and DWD long-range seasonal models. See what we're all showing for the next few months for today's second video. So I think this takes us into the beginning anyway of the winter, so we get towards the end of the year with this update, beginning with the tri-monthly period of August, September, October, and I think we finish up with October, November, December. So that's what we're doing for our second video for today. Just say that GWV Study Roundup has been released. That video is on the homepage right now, so have a look at that when you get done with this video. No autumn analogues today, but taking the week off, James has been working on something for the winter update, the first winter update. So you'll see what James has been working on this week when we do the first winter update on the first day of September. But it meant that we didn't have time to do that set of data and also data for autumn. But the 7th autumn analogues update will be back next Sunday, a week today. Right, so let's go on with it. We're at the Copernicus website, by the way. We link to this at GWV.com, and I'll drop the link into the description at YouTube, so you can have a look at all of these charts for yourself. And we'll get on with it. We'll begin by having a look at mean sea level pressure anomalies from Meteo France for the next few tri-monthly periods, beginning for the tri-monthly period of August, September, October. So we see we've got an area of high pressure. Let's change the colour. We've got an area of high pressure sitting to the west-northwest of the UK for this tri-monthly period, for the late summer into the beginning of the autumn, I suppose, and that would send the jet stream northwards. Maybe a trough in that sort of area. It's not really showing a trough, but you will think there will be some sort of trough somewhere across northern Europe, so the jet stream could be doing something a little bit like that, perhaps a bit of a trough through there. But for us, we're blocking off the Atlantic, so it should be reasonably dry anyway through that tri-monthly period. We progress on to the next tri-monthly period, which takes us to September, October and November with Meteo France. This is what it's showing. We lose that area of high pressure. We start to get some lower pressure developing up to our north, actually, as the area of high pressure begins to slip away a little bit towards the east. So possibly, just possibly, signs of a little bit of a return of a westerly flow there as we get through to the actual autumn itself, September, October, November. The autumn 2019 possibly starts to turn a little bit more unsettled. And then we go through to the final tri-monthly period, which takes us to October, November, December with Meteo France. And then we see that low pressure is coming in big time to our north. So obviously quite a strengthening of the zonal flow, quite a strengthening of the jet stream. And that would give us a pretty unsettled end to the year, you would have thought, with quite a lot of wet weather and a strong sort of westerly zonal flow would be expected in that kind of scenario. Maybe even begin to turn a little bit stormy up in northern and western parts of the country for that final tri-monthly period for the year, October, November, December. So let's see if we can confirm that to some degree, and we'll move over to the temperature and precipitation anomalies from Meteo France. This is how the temperature anomaly is looking with Meteo France for the coming tri-monthly period, August, September, October. And for Northern Europe, it's actually looking close to average or a little bit above average. So Scandinavia's coming out close to average, UK and Ireland coming out a little bit above average in most yellow colours. That's around half a degree above average. So the far north and northwest of Europe is closer to average. However, most parts of Europe are looking quite warm. So we've got pretty warm air here across France, down to Spain and Portugal, kind of like over a degree above average there. And many of those central and eastern parts of Europe are also coming out pretty warm as well in this tri-monthly period for the end of the summer and into the early part of the autumn. So it's warm across many parts of Europe. It's a little bit closer to average in the far north and west of Europe. That's how we look in the next tri-monthly period for the autumn of 2019, September, October, November. Overall, it's slightly above average for much of Northern Europe. So again, we're kind of like a little bit above average, but no more than that. And elsewhere, so it's kind of like half degree to 1 degree above average, something like that. So slightly above average, but not excessively so for the autumn of 2019. Certainly no sign of colder than average temperature anomalies, though. And then for the final tri-monthly period, which is October, November, December, this is how we're looking. The far northeast is a little bit warmer than average there. So again, up to around half degree to 1 degree above average. Elsewhere, again, across many central and western parts of Europe, it's just a little bit above average, around average to half a degree above average. So it's a relatively mild sort of final 3 tri-monthly periods to the year with Meteo France, but not excessively so. The warmest tri-monthly period away from the northwest of Europe is actually the coming tri-monthly period for August, September, October. And then after that, it just reverts to being very close to average. When we see those yellow curves, I basically think that is pretty much sort of average, really average to slightly above. So no sign of anything particularly cold coming up, we have to say that. But for these sort of models, that's a relatively a modest temperature forecast. It's certainly not going excessively warm over the next few tri-monthly periods, particularly after the first tri-monthly period is out of the way. Right, precipitation from Meteo France. This is how it's looking. And again, come back to August, September, October. And it's looking drier than average across much of the west of Europe, you'll notice. So around the UK, and particularly going down into France and into northern parts of Spain, drier than average there. Also looking drier than average into central parts of Europe and going up towards parts of Scandinavia as well. So quite a dry sort of opening to the period, August, September, October, the beginning of the autumn of 2019 certainly looks like it's going to be getting off to quite a dry start. Then we go through to the next tri-monthly period, which again is for the autumn of 2019, September, October, November. That drier than average area is still there to some degree, down to the southwest of the UK and to west of France and towards the Bay of Biscay. But obviously it looks like it's shrinking quite a lot compared to the first tri-monthly period. So it's still a little bit drier than average overall for the autumn of 2019 in the far west and northwest of Europe. But certainly, I think later on in the autumn, we do see a signal here, but it probably is turning more unsettled. And the next tri-monthly period will take us through to the final sort of quarter of the year, which is October, November, December. And then we start to see wetter than average anomalies beginning to appear to our north and to our west too. So this tells us that as we're progressing on towards the final months of the year, it's getting more and more unsettled, which you'd expect from a mean sea level pressure anomaly, because it did show low pressure coming back to Greenland and Iceland, which would strengthen the zonal westerly flow and will also strengthen the jet stream. So it is seeing a westerly zonal flow hitting not just the UK but much of northern and western Europe here as we get towards the end of the year. Drier than average conditions being forced away to our south, so it's going to drier than average down there towards the west of Portugal. That's the ever-present Azores high, so we've got the high pressure down there, and then we've got low pressure up here, which strengthens the zonal flow. This is a mild signal for the winter. And of course, it's only getting us to October, November, December. It only gets us to the very, very start of the winter. It says nothing really about what we would expect to happen later on in the winter. Right, so that's Meteo France. Let's have a look at the ECMWF contribution then. And we come back to mean sea level pressure anomalies. This is mean sea level pressure anomaly for August, September, October from ECMWF. This is what it's showing. So a weak area of above average heights just to our northeast, but below average heights, or below average pressures, it means the pressure, low pressure then up towards Greenland. Slight return of the zonal flow, but we're still close enough to that ridge to possibly get a little bit of dry weather. The ridge is much weaker with ECMWF as compared to Meteo France. It's not a stronger ridge, but it is still there to some degree, sitting just to our northeast. Then we go through to the next tri-monthly period with the ECMWF. It's September, October, November, autumn 2019, and it's a similar story really, this, to what Meteo France was showing. So low pressure is developing around Greenland and Iceland. We're losing any area of high pressure, and again it suggests a strengthening of the westerly zonal flow. And does that continue into the final tri-monthly period, which is October, November, December? Yes, it does. Again, look at this, all of this low pressure, these blue colours up here towards Greenland and Iceland. Westerlies raging in off the Atlantic. You expect an unsettled, potentially quite stormy end to 2019 on that scenario from the ECMWF. Temperature anomalies from the ECMWF for August, September, October are above average for many parts of Europe. Again, it's not excessively so, just rather above average, so kind of like 0.5 degree to 1 degree above average is the temperature anomaly, which is not excessive. We're not into these red colours, 1 to 2 degrees above average. It certainly isn't below average either. We're not down to those blue colours. We're just close to or slightly above average, really. The warmest anomalies to average, similar to Meteo France, are through these more central areas. In the northwest, it is actually a little bit closer to average for the UK, Ireland, and Scandinavia as well. Temperature anomaly then increases as we go through to the next tri-monthly period, which is for the autumn of 2019. We find those orange colours expanding out. So not excessively warm, but it is 0.5 degree to 1 degree above average there through most central, northern and western parts of Europe. Nowhere forecast to be below average for the autumn of 2019 in Europe. And then the final tri-monthly period gets us to October, November, December, and again it's average to warmer than average through most parts of the northern, central and western Europe too. No signal on the far eastern side of Europe, you'll notice, in those white areas. Could be a little bit colder down there, I suppose, if we're bringing in sort of a strong zonal westerly type flow blasting into Europe, then you might push cold air down the far eastern side of Europe. So these southeast areas around the Black Sea, up into the west of Russia, might be a bit colder there. But it does look pretty mild and potentially quite stormy as we get through to the end of the year on both ECMWF and Meteo France. Let's have a look at the precipitation anomalies. So we come back to August, September, October. And it's looking not as dry, actually, in the west of Europe as Meteo France is for this first tri-month period. It's still a little bit drier than average to our south and also to our northeast. But generally, for most parts of Europe, actually, we've got no signal here for this first tri-monthly period. Then through to the next tri-monthly period, which is September, October, November. Again, very, very weak signals with ECM for precipitation. A little bit drier than average for parts of France. A little bit drier than average perhaps to our north, but overall again no real signal, except maybe a bit wetter on the eastern side of Europe. And then we're through to the final tri-monthly period, which takes us to October, November, December. Very, very weak signals again with the ECMWF, but it is turning a little bit wetter than average now, just out to the west of us, which again you would expect if the zonal westerlies are powering up, if low pressure in the Atlantic is powering up with the jet stream, you would expect areas of low pressure to be swept in to the west of Europe, and of course the UK and Ireland first in the firing line for that. So you'd expect it to start to go wetter and wetter as the jet stream and those westerlies power up. So I think Meteo France and ECM are certainly singing from the same hymn sheet, really, which is relatively quiet conditions to start the autumn, but then the westerlies power up. So by the time you get through to the end of the autumn, and possibly the start of the winter in December, it does look rather westerly and perhaps even a little bit stormy. DWD is the final contribution, so again we come back to mean sea level pressure anomalies for August, September, October. This is how it's looking, and anticyclonic signal to start us off. All three models are in agreement about that. High pressure centred not just over UK, but across much of northwestern Europe for this early sort of autumn period. The jet stream is pushed northwards, so you expect quite a lot of dry, relatively warm weather with that. Does it go for the low pressure developing scenario to our north? Well, the German model looks like this. So the next trimester period, which is the autumn 2019, September, October, November, does look as though we're starting to get some low pressure developing to our north, though we're still actually under this ridge of high pressure. So the DWD is trying to extend out the high pressure and have an anomalous area of high pressure through the autumn, quite interestingly. So that would be a drier scenario for this autumn. And then the final tri-monthly period for October, November, December does then get to where the other models are. That area of high pressure is just beginning to weaken and slip away in central parts of Europe. It's being deflated really as low pressure develops to our north. Westerlies are powering up therefore. And so it's not going quite as far for that final tri-month period as the other two models, but it's going in the same direction. It's trending in the same direction, which is a return of zonal weather and westerlies into the final period of the year. Temperature anomalies from DWD are looking like this for August, September, October. Actually quite warm. This is the warmest that we've seen from any of these three models for this first tri-monthly period. It's going over a degree, between 1 and 2 degrees above average there, across many central parts of Europe. It does look a little bit cooler out in the far northwest, but I think that's the hottest of the three for the end of the summer and the early autumn period, looking very warm potentially, particularly through central parts of Europe. Above average temperatures then continue into September, October, November, widely above average, not as much as it is that first tri-monthly period, but even so, most places half degree to 1 degree above average, widely UK and Ireland included in that. Mild autumn coming up, if that's correct. It's in line with other models. And then we see October, November, December. Again, same story. Overall, slightly above average through most parts of Europe. So we're again around average to half degree to 1 degree above average through many parts of Europe. No sign of anything particularly cold, except perhaps in this far southeastern corner, might be a little bit cooler there, and in the North Atlantic. Does look a little bit colder than average there, but most parts of Europe, including the UK and Ireland, warmer than average as we go to the close of the year. Finally, precipitation from DWD. This is how it's looking. So once again, we find that it's drier than average through much of Central and Western Europe for the first tri-monthly period of August, September, October. Which you would expect, of course, high pressure is dominating through this early autumn period, so you expect quite a lot of dry and warm weather to be on offer. Quite a big weakening of that dry and average signal for the autumn itself, September, October, November. It is still a little bit drier than average through the central and northern parts of Europe and down towards Spain and Portugal, but it is a lot weaker compared to the first tri-monthly period. So obviously there's a bit of a deterioration in the weather pattern going on there, although still relatively dry signals for much of Europe for the autumn of 2019. And then we finish up for October, November, December, again looking at rather unsettled, above average rainfall appearing in the North Atlantic and also to the north of the UK. This would imply, again, that westerlies are powering up, the zonal flow is increasing, high pressure is probably around here. And they're all trending in the same direction, really, for the end of the year, which is certainly no sign of northern blocking, no sign of anything particularly cold. rather mild and potentially getting quite stormy. But of course, that's right at the end of the year. It's a very long way out. Before that, though, most of these models agree on quite a lot of high pressure for the end of the summer and into the early autumn. So August, September might have quite strong anticyclonic signals if these models are correct. Big if, of course. This is very unreliable stuff. But if these models are correct, then the end of the summer, August, September, might have relatively warm, dry signals, and then it begins to turn more and more unsettled from October through November to what could potentially be quite a wet and stormy December. We shall see. Right, so we're doing it all over again next month. Of course, next month's update will take us further then on in towards the winter itself, winter 2019-2020, so that'll be quite an interesting watch next month. Don't forget to check out Gauss Weather's Sunday Roundup. It's on the homepage right now, and in a week's time, or actually would be a week yesterday, a week sort of Saturday, we are going to be looking at all of the long-range models for the autumn 2019 for only the second time this season. So these models will form part of that update, but we'll get several more models together for the second autumn 2019 seasonal model update, and that will be coming up on Saturday, and then the day after that, Sunday, we'll have that 7th autumn 2019 analogues update for you. All right, that's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.